So one thing that Noia is going to need is some really cool loot. And just as important, it's going to need some places where you can get that loot. That's right, we're talking about bosses and dungeons this week. Let's get into this. So like many things in Noia, I'm pulling these ideas from different experiences and games that I've had in my life, and I kind of cut my teeth on the MMO world with a game called EverQuest 2. One of the cool things that I really enjoyed about EverQuest 2 is, while yes, they did have some instanced dungeons, most of it was actually just open world exploration. Now, there was a lot of places that you could go by yourself to explore and battle different monsters and occasionally a boss or two, but there was also these open world dungeons where you and your group would fight your way down and get into a good spot to grind for a little bit for from good EXP. And at the same time, there were also dungeons that were at the bottom of these open world dungeons that you still had to pre-form your group and fight your way down there to get to it. A lot of MMOs these days have like looking for group options and dungeons that you can just spin up whenever you want. All you have to do is click the dungeon you want, hit looking for group, and as soon as the group is full, it just teleports you magically to the dungeon. And I feel like a lot of the hard work that goes into the world building of these MMOs is lost on the player for the sake of convenience for this. I don't necessarily want that for Noia. You know, I did enjoy getting the group together and then as a group go to the entrance to the dungeon. It makes more sense in the context of the world, and it was an activity that kind of sealed the group dynamic together before you even got to the dungeon. So I did enjoy that quite a bit. And so that is what I have planned for Noia right now, is there will not be any sort of instant teleporting to dungeons. You're going to get your group together ahead of time and head there together. And there the party leader will be able to pull everyone into the dungeon all at once. Once inside, there are a couple of different clear criteria that can be used, whether it's defeat the final boss or defeat a certain number of enemies or a certain specific couple of enemies, or clear the entire thing. This is just a very basic room that I created that I made into a dungeon. Its clear mechanic is clear all enemies, and as you can see here, these two people go into the dungeon. They cannot see each other. They each get their own instance enemies, as you would expect. So this particular test dungeon is set up with the clear criteria of kill all monsters. As you can see, once you come in here, there's a little bit of a red fog that kind of comes around the edges of the screen there to give you a sense of danger. Once all of these creatures are cleared out, the red fog goes away. Cool little beams of light, reminiscent of the old Diablo 1, Diablo 2 starter cave come out. You get your big dungeon clear fanfare, and then you are able to leave. Instances are not exactly something that comes out of the box in UMMO RPG 2D. Maybe it will someday, but this is something that I had to throw together myself. And it is kind of a little hacky behind the scenes. It's basically everybody gets a little number associated with themselves with what instance ID they're supposed to be in, and if you are not on the same instance ID as someone else, their renderer is disabled. So they're still there, you just can't see or interact with them. And that rule follows with monsters as well. Monsters with a different instance ID you cannot see or interact with. Doesn't mean they aren't there. There may be an issue with this if way too many people go into the same dungeon together, because technically your client does receive all of that data from those monsters because you're in range of them. Whether or not this is a huge problem is yet to be seen. I might have to mess with what they call the observer list later down the road and cull that to be only visible entities, but so far it's not a problem. Now, when you're talking about loot for Noia, a lot of MMOs these days have these weird tier systems that are very convenient for the player, so to speak. You have, like tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, and so on, and the player knows exactly what to expect with that. If you have a dagger in tier 3, you know exactly, a dagger in tier 4 is going to be 3.682% better than a dagger in tier 3. I don't particularly like that because it removes it kind of removes the fun out of it when you start just throwing preset math at certain things. I did like things where I do like it when it's a bit more unknown, where certain items drop from certain bosses rather than just, this is a tier 3 boss and he can drop anything in the tier 3 loot table. I didn't really appreciate that all that much, and it made for what I felt was a better tightly knit community, because this really cool sword might drop from this boss and this really cool wand might drop from this boss, and you have to help each other achieve those goals. So where, the knight might help his wizard friend get his cool wand, then in the reverse, the wizard will help the knight get their cool sword. So specific entities will have entity-specific drop tables, not just tiered drop tables. This enemy is tier 2 and he only drops tier 2 items. That's boring. That's boring to me. I kind of like the way weapons and gear were handled in Dark Souls, where there's no real tier system. It's just a bunch of random stuff that was thrown into the game willy-nilly that all correlated with the particular boss that it dropped from. They didn't, they weren't stuck with a hard tier system like some other MMOs are, that locked in their creativity and kind of stifled it. They were able to just design cool things and put it in the game where they thought it should be. And that's more what I want for Noia. That's it for this week. Just a couple of design discussions about how loot is generated, how dungeons are handled in open world versus instance dungeons. Just as a reminder, we do have an open Discord up. If anybody wanted to jump in and say hi and whatnot, your feedback is always welcome. I have been making progress on the first map for Noia, so you can check out the progress there in the No Zero Days channel. And I think that's it. We'll see you guys in the next one.